have to get into that main event. So although
Yeah.
I love to talk Britt Baker, that's going to have to wait because everybody's chatting about a Moxley versus Omega and that exploding barbed wire death match. So SPD,
Wow.
why don't you jump in real quick? Was this first of all, before we even get into the ramifications of what happened and sort of the discussion afterwards that comes with it,
right?
You're a Kenny Omega mark, and you love yourself, Kenny.
For sure.
You are an advocate. You feel like he's one of the absolute best on the planet. When you were watching this one, I was worried about you as far as the blood and the guts were concerned. What was your take on this match? Would this one hold up as an elite or a delete from you? Big picture, all things included.
I mean, absolutely. Just before I dive in, big picture, absolutely elite. I mean, this, I had no idea what to expect. I've never seen anything like this, and it was cringeworthy at times to watch. I mean, right away we saw a lot of color out of Mox, and right away, I mean, it was brutal. And you could tell, I mean, wrestlers are outstanding at selling, they're actors essentially as well, a great acting skill, but you could tell, I feel like legitimately both guys look nervous and uneasy about it. And then, so would I would never, ever, ever want to be in a situation in a match like this. And so, adding Callis on commentary was pure gold as expected, much needed to have that. And JR was, sounding, losing his voice too. So having that little pick me up for the main event really helped. But, the build of this was outstanding. All show AEW did a fantastic job with their pre-match packages. And this was another great one. And it was almost comical, but needed to see Bryce Rimsberg in a bomb suit, like he
looked like a beekeeper.
A beekeeper party Breaking Bad. But I mean, 2 careers were essentially on the line, and and JR said it best. It was like most dangerous match he's ever seen, and I agree. And it was brutal. And it, like I said, I had no idea what to expect, and it delivered it in terms of good storytelling. But it was just, a lot of times I caught myself like having to look away when they would zoom close in on Jon Moxley, bleeding. And I'm not going to show any of those photos for this, just for that sake. But because we'll try to keep things as PG as possible. But I think the overall execution of this, being a new thing, or really, foreign territory for a lot of people, they executed it really well. With the timed rope explosions and things like that. I think that those things executed really well. I mean, we'll talk about the end at the end, but I think these things worked well for the effect when the Good Brothers came out with that barbed wire bat and exploded as well as the surprise. It worked really well. But just the brutal paradigm shift on the outside barbed wire. I mean, I don't know who got it worse, man, but everyone. But I mean, the finish was kind of frustrating.
Drop kicking Mox, and we talked about like Kenny driving Mox into the barbed wire multiple times in this one. So SPD, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Even with some of the things that went wrong at the end, where does this stand out to you? Is this an elite or a delete?
It's an elite for me. I think the storytelling and everything around it, and the way they safely as possible executed this, it's an elite for sure. It was still entertaining. They had some cool wrestling spots. It was violence turned up to maximum, and then blowing the speakers on all of the violence in general. So I enjoyed some of that part. The paradigm shift on the chair was brutal. There were some cool spots, when Mox put his foot on the rope to break the pin, and it exploded as well.
Scared the ref.
I'm just so, me personally, I'm just so sick of the Good Brothers. In a match like this, they should have just not been involved, and I'm over them. And it makes sense for Kenny's booking, and it fits well, but I'm personally over the Good Brothers, and I'm ready for them to get put in their place or get put back on Impact where they belong, but what do you think for this, elite or delete?
It's funny you mentioned them, and that's honestly, I felt like the ending of this match was really overbooked. And again, I'm a fan, but I felt like the Good Brothers getting involved detracted from the violence that we saw in this match, and that was before all the stuff with Kingston and with the faulty explosion at the end. I was already starting to become soured, where I was like, dude, like, why am I seeing Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows just kind of standing around in the middle of the ring?
Right.
And they were at points like just standing there. Well, like, why are they even in the picture of this? They're detracting from this was Kenny Omega versus Moxley 3, right? This was the culmination of, this dates back to when Moxley debuted in AEW.
Right.
And I just feel like this was a case of where they kind of, and we love that AEW likes to, I always do this with my hands. They love to blend, the different stories. They bring them all together. All these different characters that come together, and we love that.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like this was one of those instances live while I was watching. I was like, man, like, this is detracting from the two competitors that are literally spilling their blood for us. It felt like it was cheapening the moment for those guys, and and that hurt the overall product for me. And I felt myself kind of retracting from my emotional investment when I saw that. Now, I try to pinch myself and remind myself, hey, man, Hollywood Hogan had the Outsiders do this stuff all the time with NWO and stuff like that. But
good point.
I think that Kenny is above that. I felt like this match, especially the circumstances, was above that. We've seen the Good Brothers week after week after week with Kenny getting the upper hand on Moxley, laying him out, beating him up, V-triggers, all sorts of stuff, right? We've seen that dynamic. We did not need to be reminded that the Good Brothers are there to help Kenny cheat. I think that this would have been a much stronger showing if they just allowed these two men to shine, and they didn't they didn't do all this extra stuff that ended up, I feel like, taking away from the performance of these two performers. My personal opinion. So for me,
I would have been happy if they just handed them a bat and stood on the stage and watched Kenny finish the job versus getting in the ring. But that's me.
Yeah, I honestly, this match is a delete from me, and it's not.
Wow.
I know it's shocking, with it being a main event and with the stakes that were on the line and with the people that were in it. I felt like this suffered from overbooking. I felt like the violence. I was expecting there to be a lot of violence in this match, but I don't. Looking at the way that things played out, I think that these two men are capable of incredible psychology. I felt like some of the way this match went detracted from that psychology. It just was a miss for me. To me, I felt like this, and that's. I know it's in hindsight now, looking back and seeing all the stuff, and I know that AEW is going to do a very nice job of navigating these waters. There are going to be a lot of critics. We've seen him come out for the way the match ended. I don't want to feel like I'm joining that crowd. I know what these guys are capable of, and these guys put themselves through a lot of suffering in this match. To me, it was brutal. But I felt like the overbooking at the end really, really hurt the end product of this match. And it's hard not to have that linger as the taste in your mouth when you see it. I think that these two guys are more than capable of carrying their own weight, and they just did not need all that extra shenanigans. And I hope that this is a learning lesson for AEW. They're a very young company. True. Sometimes we can benefit from a less is more approach. Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley do not need all these other bells and whistles to put on an absolute barn burner of a match. And I feel like looking back on it, those extra bells and whistles that they tried to add to it actually hurt them in the long run. So it's a soft delete for me. I think that, I'm not going to pretend like I didn't enjoy moments of that match. I thought that they did a great job at times, but the violence was not. The blood from Moxley was hard to watch, and that's coming from a lifelong wrestling fan. That was really hard to watch.
I was telling you, I was like, get this man a towel.
Yeah, and I just feel like I'm looking at it just, man, when you look at the sacrifice and what the pain and suffering that these guys went through, I just think that the way that it played out didn't do them a lot of favors and didn't glorify this, like what they went through. And that to me is why, I think that they suffered from that overbooking. And I had a feeling that Kingston was starting to turn to defend Moxley with some of the stuff.
I know you called that a couple of weeks ago when we were there live. You were saying, when those two were battling and he got the clean pin, that like you could totally see him joining up with Mox. And I mean, we saw that at the end. And before we shift into the next match, because we could talk about this one, dissect it for hours.
Absolutely.